They hit me at midnight when the temperature had dropped to 15 below. I was coming back from checking my wolf traps, part of my job as a wildlife population consultant, when I saw 3 cars parked at my gate, 7 people standing in the headlight beams, their breath steaming like angry dragons in the frozen air. 2 identical women in bright pink down jackets stood in the center, Karen's sisters. I'd heard about them taking over the town council in some joke election where only 12% of people showed up. Now, here they were, in my driveway, past midnight, like some kind of municipal death squad. The older one held up a court document. The younger one gripped a chainsaw. My grandfather's compass, hanging around my neck under my coat, felt warm against my chest, the only warm thing in this frozen nightmare. "This property is condemned," the older Karen announced, her voice cutting through the winter air like broken glass. "You have 30 minutes to vacate. No compensation." I looked at these 2 middle-aged women who'd apparently decided my life was their personal problem to solve. The chainsaw sister pulled the starter cord once. The engine roared to life, blue smoke mixing with the truck exhaust in the bitter air. "On what grounds?" I asked, though I already knew this wasn't going to be a reasonable conversation. "New fire safety codes," Pink Jacket number 1 said, waving her papers like they were holy scripture. "Your cabin is too close to the forest, 500 feet minimum distance. Used to be 100, but we changed that. 500 feet. My cabin sat exactly 200 feet from the tree line, had for 40 years since my grandfather built it. Now these 2 had apparently rewritten reality sometime between getting elected and deciding I was their enemy. "When did this law change?" I asked. "Last month, retroactive enforcement." The chainsaw revved again. My neighbors, the same people who'd bought firewood from me for years, stood behind their cars watching. Mrs. Henderson from down the road was filming with her phone, not filming the Karen sisters threatening me, filming me like I was the problem. You ever have that moment when you realize the world just shifted under your feet? When people you thought you knew suddenly look at you like you're dangerous? That's what happened when Karen number 2 fired up social media right there in my driveway. "Facebook Live," she announced to her phone camera. "Dangerous wolf whisperer threatens our children. This man keeps predators near our homes." I watched the viewer count climb. 100, 300, 500 people tuning in to watch my life get destroyed in real time. "My contract is with the Forest Service," I said. "Population control is legal." "Not anymore." The older sister smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant sight. "Your contract was terminated this afternoon. Something about public safety concerns and community complaints. $12,000 a month. Gone. Just like that." The chainsaw bit into my fence post. Wood chips flew, steaming as they hit the frozen ground. These women weren't here to talk. They'd come to destroy everything I'd built, everything my grandfather had left me. But here's what they didn't know about me yet. I hadn't just been sitting around these hills talking to wolves and collecting paychecks. I'd been paying attention, and sometimes when people push too hard, they find out that the quiet guy in the woods isn't as helpless as he looks. The compass around my neck caught the headlight glare as I stepped closer to their little tribunal, time to see what these sisters were really made of. The chainsaw fell silent. Karen number 2 had cut through 3 fence posts before her sister waved her off. They wanted me to watch, to feel helpless. But I was busy studying their faces, their body language, the way they moved around my property like they owned it. The older sister stepped closer, her pink jacket rustling in the frozen air. "You've got 25 minutes now. Start packing." "I'd like to see the actual ordinance," I said. "The legal documentation." She laughed, a sharp sound that cracked the winter quiet. "Legal? Honey, we are the law in this town. Town council voted unanimously." "All 3 of you?" "If 5 members. We added 2 more last week." I looked at the neighbors behind their cars. 7 people total, including the Hendersons, the Johnsons, and old Pete from the corner house. People who'd known me for 20 years. None of them said a word. "What's the fine?" I asked. $85,000, Karen number 1 said, checking her clipboard like she was reading a grocery list. "Plus, immediate demolition costs. Your cabin is a threat to the municipal budget." The number hit me like a physical blow. 85,000. I had maybe $15,000 in savings, and that was before they killed my Forest Service contract. The cabin's been here since 1982, I said. And it's been a problem since 1982. We're just the first council brave enough to do something about it. The younger sister held up her phone again. 1,200 viewers now, she announced. Comments are blowing up. People are sharing this everywhere. I pulled out my own phone to check. The live stream had a title, Wolfman Refuses to Leave, Threatens Families. The comment section was a nightmare. People calling me a menace, a danger to children, a lunatic who belonged in jail. My neighbor Mrs. Henderson stepped forward from behind her car. I'd known her for 15 years, helped her move furniture when her husband died, fixed her generator during the last ice storm. "Maybe it's time, Frank," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "People are scared. These wolves you work with. Maybe the ladies are right." The betrayal cut deeper than the cold. 20 years of being the guy who helped everyone, who fixed what broke, who kept the predators away from their livestock. Now, I was the predator. "Sarah," I said, "you know me." She looked down at her boots. "Times change, Frank. Can't have dangerous animals so close to where kids play." The Karen sisters exchanged a look. Victory. They'd turned my own neighbors against me, and now they were closing in for the kill. 15 minutes, the older sister said. But that's when something interesting happened. A young guy in a county jacket stepped out from behind one of the cars. Late 20s, clean cut, nervous as hell. He'd been hiding back there the whole time. "Jake Morrison," he said, extending a gloved hand. "Code enforcement." Now things were getting clearer. They had brought official muscle. "You here to condemn my property, Jake?" He looked at the Karen sisters, then back at me. "I'm here to verify compliance with municipal codes." "And what do those codes say?" Jake pulled out a tablet, his fingers fumbling in the cold. "According to the current ordinances, structures must be 500 feet from forest boundaries. Current as of when?" September 1st, 2024. I did the math in my head. 3 weeks ago, right after the Karen sisters took over the town council. But Jake's hands were shaking, and it wasn't just from the cold. He kept glancing at his phone, like he was expecting a call he didn't want to take. The way he stood, slightly apart from the group, closer to me than to them, told me something the sisters hadn't counted on. This kid wasn't entirely on their side. The wind picked up, driving ice crystals across the clearing like tiny bullets. Karen number 2 fired up the chainsaw again, this time aiming for my mailbox. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my property. This was about something bigger, something that started before tonight, before their election, before they ever heard my name. These sisters had a plan, and I was just the first stop on a much longer road. The chainsaw shredded my mailbox like it was made of paper. 20 years of mail delivery, gone in 3 seconds. Karen number 2 stepped back, admiring her work, while her sister checked her watch with theatrical precision. 10 minutes, Frank. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. But I wasn't moving, not yet, because Jake Morrison was doing something subtle with his tablet, angling it away from the sisters toward me. His eyes met mine for just a second, and he gave the tiniest shake of his head. Something wasn't right with their story. "Jake," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "What did the building code say before September 1st? The kid froze. Both Karen sisters turned to stare at him like he'd just grown a second head. "Before," he stammered. "Yeah. What was the required distance from forest boundaries before you ladies rewrote the rules?" The older sister stepped between us. "That's irrelevant. Current codes are what matter." 100 feet, Jake said quietly. "Excuse me?" Karen number 1's voice could have frozen antifreeze. The old requirement was 100 feet, has been since 2019. The live stream viewers were climbing, 1,500 now, but something had shifted in the comment section. People were starting to ask questions. Why the midnight visit? Why the rush? Why not give the man notice during business hours? "Well, the old rules were clearly insufficient," the younger sister said, still filming. "Public safety demanded immediate action." "Who's public safety?" I asked. "Mrs. Henderson, when's the last time you saw a wolf near your house?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I haven't actually." "Pete, Mr. Johnson, anyone seen wolves threatening the neighborhood?" Silence. The kind of silence that gets loud when people realize they've been played. Jake was typing something on his tablet, fast, like he was racing against time. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. "I need to make a call," he said. "No calls," Karen number 1 snapped. "This is official business." "My wife," Jake said. She's pregnant. If she can't reach me..." The older sister's expression softened for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for Jake to step away from the group, phone to his ear. But I could hear what he was saying, not the words but the tone. This wasn't a conversation with a pregnant wife. This was someone making a report, fast, urgent, scared. The wind carried pieces of his voice back to us. Falsified dates, retroactive ordinance, legal problems. Karen number 2 stopped filming. Both sisters were staring at Jake now, and their confidence was cracking like ice on a warm day. "Everything all right over there, Jake?" The older sister called out, but her voice had changed. Less authority, more worry. Jake ended his call and walked back, but he didn't look at the sisters. He looked straight at me. "Frank, I need to see your original building permits, the ones from when your grandfather built the cabin." "Why?" "Just, please, it's important." I looked at the 7 neighbors still standing behind their cars, at the Karen sisters who were no longer smiling, at Jake Morrison, who was 28 years old and clearly in over his head with whatever game he'd stumbled into. The smart move would have been to pack my bags, take the loss, and find somewhere else to live. Cut my losses before these women destroyed what was left of my life. But you know what? I've never been accused of being smart, and my grandfather didn't raise me to run from bullies, especially bullies who showed up at midnight with chainsaws and fake legal documents. "Permits are in the house," I said. "Give me 5 minutes." As I walked toward my front door, I heard Karen number 1 hiss something at Jake that made him flinch. Whatever this kid had discovered, whatever call he'd just made, it had changed everything. The game was about to get a lot more interesting. Inside my cabin, I could hear them arguing through the walls. Jake's voice high and nervous, the sisters sharp and angry. Mrs. Henderson saying something about, "Maybe we should all go home." I pulled the metal filing cabinet from behind my desk. Grandfather's original permits were in there, along with property surveys, tax records, everything that proved this land was legally mine, built to code, inspected, approved. But as I rifled through the paperwork, I could see something was wrong outside. Through my window, the crowd was breaking up, cars starting, people leaving. By the time I got back outside with the permits, only the Karen sisters and Jake remained. The neighbors had vanished like smoke, leaving tire tracks in the frozen gravel and the smell of exhaust in the bitter air. "Where'd everybody go?" I asked. "Home," the older sister said, but she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at Jake like he was a bomb about to explode. "People have jobs in the morning." I handed Jake the permits. He studied them with a flashlight, comparing dates, checking signatures. His hands weren't shaking anymore, but his face was grim. "These are all legitimate," he said finally. "Grandfather built to code, passed all inspections. The cabin is exactly 200 feet from the forest boundary, which was perfectly legal until 3 weeks ago," I finished, when the new town council decided to change the rules. The younger sister held up her phone. "Still streaming people. Don't let them fool you. This man is dangerous." But her viewer count was dropping, fast, from 1,500 to 800 to 500. People were logging off, losing interest, moving on to the next outrage. "Jake," the older sister said, her voice now ice cold, "you've done your job. Time to go." "Actually," Jake said, "I haven't, because there's a problem with the September 1st ordinance." Both sisters went very still. "What kind of problem?" I asked. Jake pulled up something on his tablet. "The municipal code requires 30 days public notice before any zoning changes, posted in the paper, mailed to affected property owners, public hearing." He showed me the screen. Official county records. This ordinance was filed September 1st, but there's no record of public notice, no hearing, no notification to property owners. The silence stretched like a frozen lake, thin and dangerous. "That's a clerical error," Karen number 1 said. "No, ma'am, it's not." Jake's voice was steadier now, more confident. "Because I checked. The ordinance was created, filed, and dated all on the same day, backdated to look like it followed proper procedure." The younger sister stopped streaming, just hit the button and ended the feed. cutting off her audience mid-sentence. "You're making a mistake, Jake," she said. "The mistake was mine for not checking sooner," he replied. "But I called my supervisor 20 minutes ago. County's opening an investigation tomorrow morning." That's when I realized what had really happened here. Jake Morrison wasn't just some kid they dragged along for show. He was the guy who'd discovered their scam. And now he was scared, not of me, but of what they'd do to him for talking. The older sister stepped closer to Jake. "You have a pregnant wife, don't you? Nice house on Maple Street? Good job with benefits?" The threat was subtle but clear as crystal. Play along or lose everything. Jake looked at me, then at them, then back at me. 28 years old, first kid on the way, career in his hands. "I'm sorry, Frank," he said quietly. And just like that, I knew I was about to lose my only ally. But that's when something unexpected happened. The kid didn't back down. Instead, he straightened up, looked both Karen's sisters in the eye, and said the words that changed everything. "The investigation starts tomorrow, with or without me." The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees, but it wasn't the weather that made me shiver. The older Karen sister's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, anger, calculation, fear, then something that looked like pure hatred. "Jake," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow sounded more dangerous than shouting. "You're making a very expensive mistake." "Maybe," Jake said, "but it's my mistake to make." That's when Karen number 2 pulled out her phone again. Not for streaming this time. She was making calls. Fast, urgent conversations with people who clearly weren't happy to be woken up at 1 a.m. "Yes, it's me," she said into the phone. "We have a problem. No, the Wolfman isn't the issue anymore. Jake Morrison. Yes, that Jake Morrison." I caught fragments of the other conversations. Something about tax assessments, building permits, a daycare license. These women had their fingers in everything. Jake's phone started buzzing, text after text. His face went pale as he read them. "Problem?" I asked. "Anonymous complaints," he said, showing me the screen. 15 of them, all filed in the last 10 minutes, against my wife's daycare business. The sisters had just declared war on his family. "Fire hazards," Jake read. "Unsafe conditions, unlicensed operations, health code violations." He looked up at me. "She runs a home daycare, 3 kids. Everything's legal and up to code." "Not anymore," the younger sister said, still on her phone. "Building inspector will be there first thing tomorrow. Health department too, social services. Amazing how many concerned citizens suddenly noticed problems." Jake's hands were shaking again, but this time it was rage, not cold. "You can't do this," he said. "Can't we?" The older sister smiled. "Frank here thought the same thing. How's that working out for him?" And that's when I understood the full scope of what I was dealing with. These weren't just 2 busybody women with too much time on their hands. This was a machine, a system for crushing anyone who got in their way. How many other people had they done this to? How many families had they destroyed with their anonymous complaints and midnight raids? Jake's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call, not a text. He answered it with shaking hands. "Hello? What? No, that's impossible. When? I'll be right there." He hung up and stared at the phone like it had bitten him. "What is it?" I asked. That was my neighbor. There's smoke coming from my garage. The Karen sisters didn't even try to hide their smiles. Jake looked at me, then at them, and something changed in his expression. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something else, something harder. "You burned down my garage," he said. It wasn't a question. "Prove it," the older sister said. Jake pulled out his tablet and started typing, fast, furious keystrokes that looked like a man racing against time. "What are you doing?" Karen number 2 demanded. "Uploading everything to the county server," Jake said without looking up. "Every conversation tonight, every threat, every illegal ordinance, every falsified document." "You can't." "It's already done." Jake hit one final key and looked up. "Encrypted backup. Even if you destroy my tablet, even if you destroy me, the county has everything." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the quiet of people thinking. This was the quiet of predators realizing their prey had grown teeth. The older sister reached into her jacket. For a second, I thought she might actually have a weapon, but what she pulled out was worse than a gun. It was a thick manila folder. "Jake Morrison," she said, reading from the papers inside. "Federal tax lien, unpaid student loans, outstanding medical bills from your wife's pregnancy complications." She smiled as Jake's face went white. It's funny how paperwork sometimes gets lost, or found, depending on how cooperative people are. But that's when I realized something important. These women had been planning this for a long time. They had files on everyone, leverage on everyone, which meant they'd been doing this for months, maybe years. And if they'd been at this that long, they'd made mistakes, left trails, created evidence. All I had to do was find it. The wind picked up again, howling through the trees like something wild and angry. Jake stood there in the cold, holding his tablet like it was the last solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned liquid. "Your move, ladies," I said. And that's when they made their biggest mistake of the night. They torched my shed at 3 a.m. I was inside the cabin, pretending to pack, when I smelled smoke. By the time I got outside, the whole structure was engulfed. $25,000 worth of equipment, my workshop, my grandfather's tools, everything I needed to make a living, gone. The Karen sisters were nowhere to be seen, but their message was clear: cooperate or lose everything. Jake had rushed home to deal with his garage fire. Before he left, he'd pressed something into my hand, a flash drive. "Everything's on there," he'd whispered. "All the real building codes, the original ordinances, proof they backdated everything." But now, watching my shed burn, I realized the flash drive might not be enough. These women didn't just bend rules, they rewrote reality. And they had enough people in their pocket to make their version of events stick. The volunteer fire department showed up 40 minutes later. Chief Brennan, a guy I'd known for 15 years, wouldn't even look at me. "Accelerant?" I asked him. "Can't tell yet," he said, hosing down the smoking remains. "But Frank, word of advice, maybe it's time to move on." Even he was scared of them. By morning, the whole town knew. Not the truth, their version. The story spreading through coffee shops and gas stations was that I'd burned my own shed for insurance money, that I was dangerous, unstable, probably planning to burn down the whole forest out of spite. Karen number 2's Facebook page had exploded overnight. Photos of the fire, testimonials from concerned neighbors, a petition with 300 signatures demanding my immediate removal from the community. I sat in my cabin, surrounded by half-packed boxes, and tried to think. The flash drive proved their ordinance was illegal, but who was going to listen? They controlled the town council. They had files on everyone. And now they'd made it look like I was the problem. That's when my phone rang. "Frank, this is Bill Davidson. I'm the contractor who built the Karen sisters' porches last month." I'd seen him around town, but never really talked to him. Big guy, looked like he'd been swinging hammers since he was 12. "What can I do for you, Bill?" "It's more what I can do for you. Can you meet me at Murphy's bar in an hour? And Frank, bring that flash drive Jake gave you. Trust me on this." Murphy's bar at 10 a.m. was about as empty as you'd expect. Just me, Bill Davidson, and Murphy himself, who was pretending to clean glasses while obviously listening to every word. Bill slid a beer across the table and got straight to the point. "I recorded them." "Recorded who?" "The Karen sisters. When they hired me to build their porches, they spent the whole time talking about their plans, how they were going to clean up the town, get rid of the undesirables." He pulled out his phone. "Your name came up a lot." He hit play. The audio was crystal clear. Karen number 1's voice. "Frank's just the beginning. Once we get rid of him, we go after the Hendersons. Their property taxes are 3 months behind." Karen number 2. "What about that Mexican family on Pine Street? Code violations?" "Already filed. Anonymous complaints about their fence height, lawn maintenance, too many cars in the driveway." My blood went cold. This wasn't about me. I was just target practice. "How many people are they going after?" I asked. "Dozen, maybe more. Anyone who doesn't fit their vision of what the town should look like." Bill drained his beer. "Problem is, they're going after my family now. Anonymous complaints about my business. Suddenly I need permits I never needed before. Inspections that are scheduled when I can't be there. So why help me?" Bill was quiet for a long moment. "Because my daughter goes to Jake's wife's daycare. And if they'll destroy that family to get to you, they'll destroy mine to get to him." He was right. The Karen sisters weren't just bullies. They were systematic. They'd weaponized bureaucracy, turned the entire municipal system into their personal enforcement arm. But Bill wasn't done. "There's something else," he said. "When I was building their porches, I saw inside their houses. They've got files, thick manila folders on half the town, financial records, personal information, photographs. Legal? Doubtful. But more importantly, they've got copies of every ordinance they've changed, every rule they've bent, including the real dates when everything was filed." My pulse quickened. "You sure about this?" "Dead sure, because I helped them move a filing cabinet from one sister's house to the other, heavy thing, full of folders, and one of them fell open." Bill pulled out his phone again and showed me a photo. It was blurry, taken quickly, but I could make out enough. Official county letterhead, multiple signatures, and a date stamp that was 3 weeks later than what they had told Jake. "They kept the originals," I said. "Every single one, probably as insurance in case someone tried to prosecute them later." I looked around the empty bar. Murphy had disappeared into the back room, probably smart enough to give us privacy for what came next. "Bill," I said, "how good are you at getting into places you're not supposed to be?" He grinned for the first time since I'd met him. "Frank, I'm a contractor. Breaking into places is half my job." The plan was simple, stupid, dangerous, and probably illegal, but simple. Tonight, we were going to get those files. We waited until the Harvest Festival started at 6 p.m. Half the town would be there, including the Karen sisters, who were scheduled to give a speech about community safety and property values. Bill knew the older sister's house like he'd built it himself. Backdoor key under the fake rock. Security system code written on a sticky note inside the breaker box. These women were so confident in their power, they'd gotten sloppy about everything else. The filing cabinet was in the basement office, exactly where Bill remembered it. 4 drawers packed with manila folders, each one labeled with a name I recognized. My neighbors, my friends. People who'd lived in this town for decades, reduced to insurance records and tax lines and building code violations. But it was the bottom drawer that made my hands shake. Master Plan was written on the folder tab in neat handwriting. Inside were architectural drawings, property assessments, and a list of names with dollar amounts next to them. My name was at the top, Henderson Property, $847,000 estimated value after demolition and subdivision. The Henderson Property, my land. They weren't trying to get rid of me because I was dangerous. They wanted my 40 acres for a housing development. "Jesus," Bill whispered, reading over my shoulder. "They're planning to tear down half the old neighborhood." The documents laid it all out. Shell companies, fake ordinances designed to force out longtime residents, anonymous complaints timed to coincide with property tax deadlines, a systematic plan to gentrify the entire area and cash in on the land grab. Jake's house was on the list too. So was Bill's. 15 families total, marked for removal. I stuffed the entire folder into my jacket and was about to leave when I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Bill and I looked at each other. The festival wasn't supposed to end for 2 hours. Footsteps on the front porch, keys jingling. The older sister's voice. "I don't care what the county investigator said. We stick to the plan." We were trapped. Bill pointed to the basement window, too small for either of us to fit through. The stairs were the only way out, and they led straight to the front door where the Karen sisters were now entering. "Frank, I need those files," the older sister was saying as she walked into the house. "The ones from the Morrison investigation. If the county sees the real dates..." That's when I realized they were here for the same reason we were, to destroy evidence. I could hear them moving around upstairs, probably gathering documents to burn or shred. We had maybe 5 minutes before they came down to the basement. Bill grabbed my arm and pointed to an old coal chute in the corner. "Think you can fit?" I looked at the narrow opening that probably hadn't been used since the 1950s. "Do I have a choice?" That's when we heard the basement door open, footsteps on the stairs. I squeezed through the coal chute like my life depended on it, which it probably did. Bill was right behind me. We emerged in the backyard covered in coal dust and spider webs, the master plan folder still clutched in my hand. But we weren't safe yet, because as we crept around the side of the house, I could see both Karen sisters through the kitchen window, frantically shredding documents. They knew the county investigation was closing in. They were destroying evidence as fast as they could feed it into the machine. All except the one folder that really mattered, the one that was now in my jacket, proof of everything they'd done to me and 14 other families. The next morning, I didn't call the county investigator. I didn't call the sheriff. I didn't call a lawyer. I called the local newspaper and asked them to meet me at Murphy's Bar at noon. Then I called the 3 families on their hit list who still had some fight left in them. Finally, I called Jake Morrison and told him to bring his tablet and his backup files. By the time the Karen sisters realized what was happening, it was too late. The newspaper story ran that afternoon. Local officials orchestrate land grab scheme, dozens of families targeted for removal. Complete with photographs of the master plan documents and audio recordings of the sisters discussing their strategy. The county investigation that had started as a routine zoning complaint became a full-scale fraud investigation within hours. Both Karen sisters were arrested that evening, not just for falsifying documents, but for conspiracy, fraud, and extortion. The shell companies they had set up to buy the seized properties led investigators to bank accounts in 3 different states. The town council was dissolved. Emergency elections were scheduled. All the fake ordinances were voided. But here's the thing about small-town justice. It's never clean. It's never simple. And it always costs more than you think you're willing to pay. Jake Morrison kept his job, but his wife's daycare never recovered. Too many parents were scared by the anonymous complaints. Even after they were proven false, they moved away 6 months later. Bill Davidson's business survived, but he spent a year fighting bogus lawsuits filed by the sisters' associates before they were finally dropped. As for me, I kept my land, kept my cabin, even got a new contract with the Forest Service. But I lost something too. That feeling of safety, of belonging to a community that would look out for each other. Half the town still whispers when I walk by, wondering if I'm the hero who exposed corruption or the troublemaker who destroyed their quiet little world. My grandfather's compass still hangs around my neck, pointing true north no matter how twisted the path gets. Sometimes that's all you can ask for. Sometimes standing up to bullies means standing alone, but at least you're standing on ground that's legally, legitimately, undeniably yours. And when the wolves howl at night, they're not the most dangerous predators in these woods anymore.